Fox Sports Radio, 1400 world on the iHeart Radio app. My name is Rob Sanders. Thanks for joining me today. Got a lot of stuff planned for us today, folks. I tell you what, man, Mondays we come in and it's like we can set the world on fire. But I tell you what, why don't we start this week with what we're going to have for the rest of the week? There we go. On Wednesday, former Clemson basketball star, and I say star because he was a great player, and now he's an analyst. This guy's got his own video show where he breaks down what's going on in the world of not just Clemson hoops, but basketball around the country. The great Terrence Oglesby joins us on Wednesday. So looking forward to that. Also, on Friday, there are very few guests that I have that get me where I feel kind of giddy. And what I mean by that is that we've all determined by listening to this show that I'm a bit of a nerd. We've also determined that I'm a bit of a wrestling nerd. So this Friday, we will have on with us Mike Mooneyham from the Post and Courier, the greatest wrestling writer in the history of wrestling. The guy wrote Sex, Lies, and Headlocks, the true story about Vince McMahon. We're going to have that for you on Friday as we get ready for the Royal Rumble this weekend. I'm one of those people, I don't care if you know I watch wrestling or not. I don't care. I watched when I was a kid. Still love it now. It's not as fun as it used to be, but I still watch because I'm a diehard fan. But we'll talk with Mike Mooneyham, one of the best wrestling writers to ever put together ink. Simple as that. Looking forward to that on Friday. Now, here's what we got planned for today. We're going to talk about the weekend that was in the NFL and how my favorite team went out, and that's fine. We're going to talk about the fans that have been complaining and losing their minds about the officials, what I think about that. Also, the Super Bowl matchup in general, the absolute love and adoration for Tom Brady. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks ever, but let's slow down a little bit with the stuff from yesterday. Let's slow down for just a little bit. All right, we'll get into that momentarily. Also, the Tennessee coaching search. Lots of rumors flying around over the weekend about who was going to get that job. I don't think they're anywhere close, to be completely honest with you. Now, watch them come out at 3:45 today. And yeah, this is our head coach. That may be what happens. I don't know. We'll have to check on that. I want to start, though, with the transfer portal biting the Clemson program as Mike Jones Jr., the linebacker, has decided to enter the transfer portal. By the way, you could have found this out earlier on my blog page at foxsportsradio1400.com. I had it posted very, very quickly there. Let's get out to the phones, 803-978-1832, and we'll welcome into the program. Good afternoon. What's up?
Yeah, hello. It's Bobby and Casey, Rob.
Hey, Bobby. How are you, sir?
Good. Yeah. On Twitter, I know some of these certain fans, Vols fans, are going overboard with the flight patterns of planes. But they showed one thing, and I think I sent it to you, Knoxville 81, TYS, Knoxville to SCE. That would be State College, Pennsylvania.
Yep.
Which
means James Franklin is in the mix.
Yeah, and so does that mean that since Vanderbilt is never going to be anywhere, and sorry to say it for any Vanderbilt fans that are out there, an SEC champion, he knew how to recruit to make them essentially a bowl team,
That's
6
true.
and 6, 7 and 5. But Tennessee is like Vanderbilt on steroids in that state because they won it all in 1998 with Phil Fulmer. So would he essentially say goodbye? And that's it. I tried here, and I'm never going to beat Ohio State because I'm Penn State.
I'm in the minority on that because I think that right now Tennessee is the worst program in the SEC. I don't really count Vanderbilt because Vanderbilt's an academic institution that just so happens to be in the SEC. The worst football program in the SEC by far, in my opinion, is the Tennessee Volunteers right now. So I don't know why James Franklin would want to leave being a perennial top 25 team at Penn State because the Big Ten is going to get love regardless, and he's going to have a highly ranked team to go to a dumpster fire in Tennessee. That makes no sense to me. But then again, I'm not the athletic director that's making those decisions. So,
and then also all these fanatical people put something out, a plane, to Knoxville, Tennessee plane in Charlotte. So could they say that they're bringing Tony Elliott from Clemson or bringing Chadwell from Conway, put them on a plane in Charlotte, CLT, and then fly them back to TI West? I was in the industry. I know all the codes.
How about Coach Healy in Charlotte? People seem to forget that guy, a young coach.
What school is he at?
Joe Healy is his name, or Will Healy. Will Healy up in Charlotte.
People the 49ers, UNC
exactly.
Charlotte.
Yep, he's up at UNC Charlotte. They just like to be called Charlotte now because we're in that terminology there, Bobby. But you can mention that coach. He's considered one of the youngest upcoming coaches out there.
Okay.
All this stuff about Clemson and, of course, Jamie Chadwell down at Coastal. Why not Will Healy? Why not a guy who helped basically build the Charlotte program up? Will Healy makes a lot of sense. I don't know if he's in the mix or not, but if I were an athletic director, I'd probably rather go with that. A young guy who's not even 40 yet, that his kids will be playing catch on the field in the middle of the game. That kind of guy, that makes a lot more sense to me than going for one of these other coaches that may not want to be there anyway. Okay.
Now my question is, did he play football in college? Was he on the defensive or offensive side of the ball?
Well,
the answer to that.
He's considered an offensive-minded coach.
Okay.
The Charlotte offense has been pretty good.
Okay.
He is played at Charlotte. Let's see here. I've got his current position, head coach at Charlotte. Playing career, he played at Air Force and Richmond. He was a quarterback.
Okay.
Was an assistant at Chattanooga and Austin Peay before taking over at Charlotte.
Okay, the reason why I kind of slant that way, I'm not his agent, but I know Billy Napier played quarterback at Furman. I'm not his agent. I'm not trying to get him to leave Louisiana for Tennessee. But when his name was floating around towards the end of the year, I was looking at what he did, and I don't think I was living up here in South Carolina when he was playing his playing days at Furman.
Right.
So, all right, Rob. Thank you. I won't take any more. Also, one thing, the Yankees and Red Sox, unbelievable, made a big trade today, the two arch rivals.
Yeah.
I sent you some of that. I don't know if you're going to get into Major League Baseball, but
I might.
Unbelievable. For us old-timers, the Yankees and Boston trading players.
Yeah, hell is officially frozen over, sir. That's kind of how I look at that.
All right, my man.
All right, brother. Care. Thank you, Bobby.
I'll call you tomorrow.
Oh, please. Appreciate it, man. Bobby calling the show and giving us his updates out in Casey. We appreciate that. Bobby tweets at me a lot. You can do that too. Follow me on Twitter at RobSoundsGood. And hey, man, I read all the tweets. I don't respond to all of them because I got kids at home, man. I gotta pay attention to them, or they're gonna grow up being like my dad hates me. But I do read the majority of the tweets. I read all the tweets. So have at it at RobSoundsGood. All right. So in addition to that, Clemson loses a linebacker to the transfer portal in Mike Jones. Has decided, hey, I'm going to leave the Clemson program. As I said, that's been up on the blog page at foxsportsradio1400.com. He tweeted out, much love, Clemson family's been the absolute best. I wouldn't trade the last 3 years for the world. That was on his Twitter account. He said he also had 30 tackles, 2 interceptions, half a sack, a forced fumble in 10 games this season. You wonder how much playing time he would have got. And you know what? I hate to be the guy that brings this up. He's going to have 2 years to play in theory. If my reckoning is correct, why would you not want to go to South Carolina, who needs linebackers? I'm not supposed to say that. I mean, stay right here in the state would make a lot of sense. I don't know. By the way, that brings up something else too. And Coach Sweeney looks like he's going to finally get into this mix a little bit with transfers after they say they never accepted transfers, but they kind of did in special situations. So there's that. Maybe Coach Sweeney is going to get into the mix of getting some transfers in. And you have to be selective. I understand that. Brock wants to know if I'm talking about grading the South Carolina coaching staff today. Yeah, I can do that. Here's what I'm going to tell you upon that. When I look at the South Carolina roster of coaches as of right now, here's what I think of them. I think Shane Beamer is a solid B+ to A- hire. The only thing that I have against Shane Beamer is the fact that he's never been a head coach before. And if you've never done it, you have to do it before I can be like, oh, this is the absolute best ever. Okay? So Shane Beamer, in my mind, is a B+ to an A-. As far as the coordinators that he has, the coach that said, yeah, we're not a bunch of SEC retreads, I absolutely love that. Absolutely love that coach. You want to know why? Because he's not under the adage that you have to be an SEC coach to be worth a damn or an SEC player to be worth a damn. That's what I like about that. And you have to step out of that mold of thinking, oh my goodness, it's the Southeastern Conference. It's the Southeastern Conference, and they invented football. That is a load of crap. You may hear other radio shows and everything else, and they'll talk about, well, the SEC is where football was invented. That's because they don't understand the game of hut-hut. They just listen to their grandpa talk about, oh, we had this and we had that, and this Alabama team and that Alabama team. Listen to me very closely. The Alabama team that won the national title this year had 2 wins in the 2 games in the regular season against teams that finished in the top 25 poll. All right. Simple as that. It's factual information. When they're the national champion, not taking anything away from them. If they would have played more teams, that would have been fine. Okay. But the reality is, at the end of the season, they had played 2 top 25 teams in the regular season, and that's it. That finished in the top 25. Okay? You got to stop thinking, oh my goodness, it's the SEC, it's the SEC. That'll get you by with your dumb friends that don't know anything about football. All right? And this is not an ACC thing or Rob leans to the ACC. It's not like that. There are other conferences that put out good football. It's not just the SEC. When your friends tell you, oh, we have an SEC schedule, oh, that's great. You can play 2 top 25 teams. Guess what? Clemson did that. Oklahoma did that. We can go through a list, an absolute list. All right. But anyway, I like the coach that did that. Now, going back to what Brock was talking about, your defensive coordinator, Coach White, is outstanding. If you've watched any of his games from Western Kentucky, he has the capability of putting together a defense that is almost I'm not going to say it's just like Coach Ellis Johnson, but it's going to be a bend, don't break type defense. Teams may wear you out in between the 20s, but you're going to keep them out of the end zone. And you may end up winning games, 21-17, something like that. All right. So there's that. As far as your offensive coordinator goes, Coach Satterfield comes from the school of Eric Rule or Matt Rule, in my opinion, up there with the Carolina Panthers. And I think it's going to be a wait and see type thing. But the sad part is I don't know how much he's going to be able to put in to this team this year because they need some recruits. And they may be able to get some as far as the transfer portal goes. But let's be honest, South Carolina right now doesn't have a true SEC caliber wide receiving core. They're great at running back. Can't argue with the young man that hurt his leg at the beginning of the season, and of course, the guy that led the SEC in rushing this year. You can't argue with those two as a 1-2 punch. So there's that. At quarterback, I don't know what Doty's going to do. I mean, they've kind of made him the quarterback by default. Is there anybody else over there you want throwing balls for South Carolina this year? No, not really. Not really. Simple as that. So on that front, I think it's a wait and see type thing. I love Coach Kimmery. I think that's an absolute home run hire simply because of the fact that, he coached a high school team that was, you could throw a rock from the Hammond campus if you throw it hard enough and maybe hit Williams-Brice Stadium. I'm mocking, I'm sure, but the reality is that he's got relationships. And I think that's great on the recruiting front. So I like the Coach Kimmery hire a lot. I think that makes a lot of sense. But I'm really high on that hire and the hiring of the defensive coordinator, Coach White, because I am a nerd and I watched 3 Western Kentucky games and I like what he did. 803-978-1832. They're making fun of me in the chat room. Realistic One says the ACC is the best conference because it puts more talent in the NFL than any other conference. Now he's just picking at me. Come on now. It's not like that. It's not like that at all. And just because you put players in the NFL doesn't mean that you're a good conference. I'm just saying. Doesn't mean that you're a great conference. By the way, Alabama, I think, has one player in the Super Bowl this for the two teams that are in there now. So does that mean that Alabama's not a good team? No. It's silly. That's the way we're the most people drafted, so we're the absolute best. You should get a coloring book and color the football. Make sure it's the correct color. Okay? Make sure you line the laces correctly, because that's about your intellect when you come at me with something like that. You don't watch enough games. Not that I'm like this crazy coach either. I'm just saying that I watch enough games that I can make a determination that the SEC is not the absolute best, and they shield themselves. They put the old Harry Potter coat on where they make themselves invisible, where you can't really see what they're doing. Not scheduling home and homes, which they're trying to get out of that now because people finally embarrassed them. They shamed them into doing what was correct. Teams like Alabama and Florida. Okay? They tried to hide that for years. And I tell you what, it's going to come out, because I don't get into the whole this conference, that conference thing, but when you start scheduling home and homes, it makes more sense to do that anyway. It makes your program better, but you're going to catch some losses. But thanks for the question there, Brock, watching the program today. You can find the program online. Look on Twitter. It's at Rob Sounds Good on Twitter via Periscope. That's the absolute easiest way to get it. So check us out over there. All right, quick break. When we come back, we will get into more of Clemson losing their linebacker and how that's not really the biggest of deal. I'll tell you why. And we'll talk a little bit about the Super Bowl matchup. Not that we're going to get in it too crazy hard, just a couple things that I took away from it. All that and a lot more in just a moment. You're listening to The Rundown here on Fox Sports Radio 1400. They only put A's on the footballs in Alabama? That's funny. I guess all the Alabama footballs are colored in red too, right? Y'all don't have to agree with me. I'm fine with that. How did I get out of the Clemson cult? Look, let me. I don't know if I've shared this with you guys that are on here. The reality is that yesterday's game with Green Bay hurt my feelings more than Clemson losing wherever. You can buy that however you want it. So, Bluegrass Sports Media says the recruiting's at a different level in the SEC. I'm not buying that either, sir. Respectfully, if you look at the 247 Sports recruiting rankings, which I'll be happy to bring up for you, because why not? Let's look at the team rankings. Let's see here. You've got Alabama, the top four. You've got Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, and Clemson. You've got a team from the ACC, a team from the Big Ten. Number 6 is Oregon. Number 7 is Texas A&M, Southern Cal, a Pac-12 team. Notre Dame, number 9, another Big 12 team at 10. Miami's at 11. I mean, yeah, they recruit at a high level, but Georgia recruits at a high level, but they don't win anything. Just saying. Hashtag 1980. I was 1 year old sucking on a pacifier when Georgia won a national title. Just throwing that out there. I'm not nearly as old as Jed Seaver over there, though. That guy's really old. He was in his 30s when Georgia won. Welcome back to the Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400 around the world on the iHeartRadio app. Couple of comments. Brock says he thinks Justin Stepp is one of the best hires. Yes, sir. I forgot Coach Stepp. Put him right in there with Coach Kimry. What he did with the Arkansas receiving core was outstanding. You can't really argue that. And I mean, made them a really great set of receivers for Arkansas. And that's kind of how you can make the argument that, yeah, the coach down there at Arkansas, was it Sam Smith, did a lot, but getting those receivers up to SEC quality kind of made Arkansas, let's not put it out there they were one of the better programs in the SEC, but there was talk that they may not win a game this year against that quote-unquote vaunted SEC schedule. Ooh, Arkansas is not going to win nothing. Here's a team that was completely raked over the coals. I mean, really raked over the coals. Arkansas is going to be terrible forever. Now they've got that SEC schedule. That's what we were talking about at the beginning of the season. And what happened? Oh, they went through that SEC schedule and they won some games. Just saying. Bluegrass Sports Media says they recruited a different level in the SEC. Yes, the SEC does well in the recruiting front, but the top 10 teams, you've got what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the top 10 are from other conferences. So it's not like other conferences aren't getting into the mix. And by the way, let's put this out there too. Everyone that, that does the whole chanting of the SEC or the ACC or the Big 10 or the Big 12 or whatever conference that you choose to ride the coattails of, let's make sure that we understand this. When they award a national title, they don't give it to the conference. It actually goes to the school, the one that actually does something. It's not like John Swofford and all the other commissioners get out there and they try to hoop it up for basketball or line up for football. No, it goes to the team. I can't believe I have to say this to some people. Just saying. It's ridiculous. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. I really appreciate Brock with his comment there about Coach Stepp, because I feel bad because I didn't mention Coach Stepp being one of those guys. He is very well thought of. And just the Arkansas thing was, great. Great. By the way, the other thing too with the SEC as recruiting goes, do we really count Georgia anymore? Because they get all this talent, but they don't really do much with it. Just saying. Remember, JT Daniels is like one of the Heisman frontrunners, and that coaching staff had him as third string. I mean, that's pretty much all you need to say about Georgia. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832. By the way, the young man Mike Jones that transferred from Clemson, maybe you could see the writing on the wall. With the line, Clemson's got 2 linebackers coming in. Barrett Carter's the big guy from, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Sewanee, Georgia. A 5-star player. Everybody loves him. He's going to come in and quite possibly push for some linebacking time. Realistic One says, when Clemson won those championships, we at NC State get money from that. Yeah, you get money from that. That's great. That's great. Bluegrass with another comment. So making an Addy isn't doing anything. It's about championships, sir. They've got one CFP appearance in the Kirby Smart era. Just saying. What else have they done since 1980? They haven't won a national title. It's not that far-fetched. Now, you can make the argument that there's only one national champion, and that's fair. But I guess my thing turned with Georgia with the whole thing of JT Daniels this season and how long it took him to get into the starting lineup. He asked if Clemson's this season was a failure. No, it's a completely different set of circumstances. It's not just with Clemson too. You can go with Oklahoma. You can go across the board. And you mentioned the recruiting. Georgia had the number 1 roster in the country as far as the 247 Sports Composite. They've won the national title, quote unquote, for recruiting like 4 years in a row. They do everything you're supposed to do on the recruiting front. They have great facilities and everything else. They play in the SEC East, which is weak. The SEC East is weak. Seriously. You get up for what, one game a year against Florida, and you've kind of beaten them senseless? Maybe I'm just not buying that. 803-978-1832, 803-978-1832 is the number to call if you want to join us here on the Rundown this afternoon on Fox Sports Radio 1400. I've got a story here that kind of made me laugh a little bit. You know, we've talked about Trevor Lawrence being the number one projected player in the draft. Some people say, hey, you know what? Maybe you could look to someone else at going with that number one pick. And I'm fine with that. But Brett Favre made these comments today saying he would not take Trevor Lawrence with the top pick in the draft. Who would Favre go with? Well, here's what he said.
I don't know if Jacksonville, in my opinion, I don't know if quarterback is their immediate need. Probably a lot of needs that they have. I would take Devontae Adams. Devontae Smith. The last two games I've watched this guy play, I mean, I'm blown away with how good, knowing that teams know that he's going to get the ball and he dominates. I think you go with a guy like that. Nothing against Trevor Lawrence, but I think you can find a free agent guy or a guy in the latter rounds or mid rounds in the draft, but you just don't find a guy like this guy can be a Jerry Rice. He can be a different, but a Randy Moss, a total game changer.
Okay, Devontae Smith was the best player in college football this year. We've talked about that. But drafting a receiver at number one is a reach, regardless of who the receiver is, especially with Jacksonville right now, who has the quarterback that has the, the porno stash. I think I can say that without getting in trouble. But, the guy has a porno stash, and he's out there trying to lead this NFL team. You get a quarterback, and you build with your quarterback. I mean, this is not that far-fetched. Look at the NFC Championship, the AFC Championship yesterday. All four teams had great quarterbacks. It's really hard not to win in the NFL without a good quarterback. Now, you can come at me and say, well, what the Ravens did it with their great defense, but that's an anomaly in my opinion. Generally, you got to have a great quarterback if you are going to win in the NFL. So I think Brett Favre also seems to forget he played with a lot of receivers that weren't really drafted that high, and he made them better. Most quarterbacks do that. It's not just Brett Favre, because I know everybody's going to think, well, Rob's just saying this. He's just saying that because he's a big Brett Favre guy. Yeah, I am. But the reality is that that's with any receiver. Great quarterbacks make receivers look a lot better. He mentioned Jerry Rice. Who was throwing Jerry Rice the football? I wonder who was throwing Jerry Rice the football. Yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit when we come back. Out to the phones we go. 803-978-1832. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Rundown.
How's it going? This is Bluegrass Sports Media. How you doing?
Hello. How are you, sir? What do you got for the program today?
I don't understand what you're saying, because you say Georgia's an absolute failure for not winning national championships.
No,
but then you
I don't
turn around
think
and say,
I don't think they're an absolute failure. I think they've not lived up to their potential for as far as the talent they've had. That's what I'm saying.
Well, here's the thing. If they played in the ACC where they got to play 8 NC States every year, they'd go to playoffs every
You mean
year.
the same ACC where Clemson played 2 ranked teams in the regular season, that same thing that Alabama did? You mean that ACC?
Oh, very cool. You're saying the 2 ranked teams. Well, NC State was ranked and got beat by a bottom feeder in Kentucky.
I'm talking about the teams that finished in the regular season, sir. The final polls, Alabama played 2 teams in the regular season that were ranked in the final polls of the season. Same thing for Clemson.
Yes, but you said that you watch football. If you watch football, then you would know the Alabama team is probably one of the top 5 best teams to ever play.
I wouldn't. I don't think they're one of the top 5 best teams ever played. Let's slow down with all of that. I think last year's LSU team would probably thump them.
I don't know about all that, but
I think the year before that Clemson team would probably thump them. The one with that all the defensive linemen that went in the NFL draft. I think they handle this Alabama team.
You mean the 2018 Clemson team?
No, it has nothing to do with being a Clemson fan. I'll take the LSU team against this Alabama team. They probably win by a couple of touchdowns. Remember, the majority of that team was playing as freshmen and sophomores and everything else the year before.
So you don't really believe that the SEC is the most dominant conference? Is that what you're trying to say?
I've said that forever. I don't think they're the most dominant conference. I think talking about dominant conference stuff is something for teams that are in the bottom of the conference so that they can bring some validity to their program.
But from top to bottom, the SEC is the best conference, wouldn't you say?
No.
Who would you say would be the top?
Once again, I don't rate conferences. I rate teams. So I think that the whole conference thing is kind of a long way of thinking about programs and football and everything else. The idea of I play in this conference, so you have to look at me like I'm better than everyone else doesn't really appeal to me. When I look at the SEC this year, I see Georgia was pretty good. Alabama was obviously great, and Texas A&M was a step below them. Florida, they had some issues of their own. You had those 4. The rest of the conference was mediocre at best.
Okay, well then what would you say about the ACC? They have Clemson and the rest of the conference is mediocre.
ACC had this season with Clemson and Notre Dame, 2 teams that are in the playoffs. Miami was also a team that made noise and did some other things. But I don't have to get into the whole ACC-SEC thing. That's think of it from this perspective. You have Alabama, who this season was a cut above everybody else, and it wasn't even close. All right? Think of it from that perspective. Go with the team because that's who they award the championship to, not the conference.
But the conference makes money from the championship. So
okay, well, are we going to talk about finances? Are we going to talk about people's tax returns now or playing football? It's a completely different argument.
Well, money makes a better football program.
Okay. Under that logic, then Clemson couldn't compete because they didn't have the SEC network backing them as far as the finances goes. So that doesn't really hold weight there either.
If we're going to talk about Clemson competing, then why don't we talk about all the PEDs they did a few years ago? That's why they.
Well, once again, that was, if you want to talk about the PEDs, that stuff was investigated and the players did not play once they tested positive. So, I mean, we can go all day, sir. I don't know who you go back and forth with here, but it's not, I mean, I'm not defending Clemson. I'm just saying if we're talking about conferences, to just ride the SEC coattails doesn't make any sense.
Okay, I don't understand. I get you. What you're saying is that you don't believe teams like Kentucky and South Carolina should be able to ride the SEC coattails.
No. I mean that if you talk about we played in the SEC and that makes us a tougher team, that makes no sense to me.
I don't believe that either. I think that doesn't make any sense to me either.
Well, we can disagree, man. We can have a beer and talk about it, but the reality is, I'm not going to change my mind. I don't think that you should take conferences and say, oh, this conference is better than that one. So look at all the teams in that conference and think, okay, they're not worth the football salt that the SEC is in. But we're supposed to have this mentality that Mizzou and Ole Miss and Arkansas and all these teams, well, you have to respect them because they're in the SEC. That's a load of crap. I respect basically 3 programs in the SEC. That would be Alabama, LSU, and Georgia. Those are the 3 cream of the crop programs right now that when you tell me that, I have absolute respect for them. The rest of them are all grabbing at straws, trying to get out of the crab pot and take one of those 3 down.
Wouldn't you think they wouldn't be grabbing at straws if they weren't in the SEC and had to play those
they make their own decisions on what conference that they play in. I mean, I can't help them with that. But I understand what you're saying, but the reality is that you think that You think you take a South Carolina team and they're going to go into into another conference, into the ACC, and they're going to be much better than they were in the SEC? I mean, do you really believe that?
I think you take a Kentucky team.
No,
Ole Miss
I mean,
team.
my question was, I was asking you about South Carolina or Tennessee or Mizzou.
Well, you're asking about the two most dead programs in the SEC.
Well, how about
besides
Mizzou? How about Mizzou? Mizzou beat the defending
Missouri
national
next year,
champion.
Missouri, you take them next year in the ACC. They're the second best team in the ACC.
I highly doubt that, sir. Highly doubt that. I mean, once again, we don't have to agree on everything, but the whole my conference is better than yours argument is just worn out. The other argument to that too is that the SEC doesn't schedule teams out of conference, and that's just as real as we can get. You don't schedule home and homes with anybody else. Florida didn't play a non-conference regular season game outside of the state of Florida for 20 years. That's protecting that little egg of, oh my goodness, we're the best ever. At least some teams, Auburn schedules home and homes with other folks. Texas A&M did the same thing. And there are other teams. LSU scheduled Texas with a home and home. But you think Alabama's going to do that? No, they're not going to do that.
Listen, I agree, and I hate Florida just as much as the next guy. But saying they haven't scheduled a game out of Florida is kind of it doesn't really indicate what. I mean, they do play the teams in Florida that are really good, like Miami and Florida State.
Well, why couldn't they do? Why couldn't they schedule a game with Texas like LSU did? Why wouldn't they do that? And by the way, Alabama's starting to do that. I'm thinking 2028, they're scheduling a game where they're going to the Horseshoe, and then they're going to come back down there. They did that because they were shamed into doing it, because people woke up and they were like, my goodness, Alabama's playing UAB and the Citadel. That's their non-conference games.
Yeah, that's true. Alabama doesn't play a very strong non-conference.
Yeah. Well, hey, man, I appreciate you joining us, man. I love the good debate here on the Rundown. Be sure to check us out every day at 3, all right?
Yes, sir. Have a good one, man.
All right, there you go. Out to the phones we go. Welcome into the Rundown. Good afternoon.
Hey, boss. How's it going?
What's going on, brother?
I was listening to this debate, and I just had to chime in on it.
I'm sure. How about it?
I realize I've never seen a football bat before in my life, but is there anybody that can, with a straight face, tell me that North Carolina loses more games with an SEC schedule this year, or Miami loses more games with an SEC schedule this year? Absolutely not.
Exactly. And you can that's my whole thing. They think that, they'll compete in that SEC schedule. And I tell you what, that Vanderbilt game, they won't have a shot in hell of winning that game. Oh, no, sir. Oklahoma wouldn't have a shot in hell of playing in the East. Oklahoma would have to get up for one game a year where they have to play Georgia. Other than that, I mean, come on, man. People have got to stop thinking my conference is better than yours. Evaluate each team and then go from there. It's as simple as that.
Oh, absolutely. And as far as the SEC non-con schedule in general,
yeah,
and Alabama's not the only one guilty of this. It's
right.
Absolutely pathetic.
It is.
The University of Florida has not played a non-con road game outside of the state since 1991.
Yeah. Now, of course, they'll make the argument that the gentleman made earlier about, but they play in-state teams. They'll play Miami and then they'll play Florida State. And I get that. But why not set it up where you have more games against teams that are in other conferences to beef your schedule up and make you look good? That way, when you have to play a Vanderbilt and Arkansas, whatever, hey, you know what? Those were wins where you win by 25 points. But hey, I went on the road and I won at insert school here, or we welcome them here and we beat them here. That just makes more sense to me.
Yeah, and I tell you, I'm not the biggest fan in the world of neutral site games, but I get it, Alabama. Duke is such a powerhouse that you don't want to go to Durham.
Yeah.
I get it. I really do.
Hey, man, I appreciate you joining the program today. Thanks so much, buddy.
Yes, sir.
All right. 803-978-1832. The caller thinks like I do. I'm just saying. Robert with a comment. How many bowl games did the ACC win this year? Oh, I don't know. When you ask about the SEC's bowl record from 2 seasons ago, you get from the SEC apologist, bowl games don't matter. You can make the argument that the bowl games don't matter at all except for the CFP games. That's the one where you're actually playing for something and not dealing with opt-outs and everything else. And by the way, if you watch the Texas A&M North Carolina game, you like North Carolina wasn't able to compete with Texas A&M. Come on, man. Step back into the real world for a little bit. Get those SEC goggles off your face. All right? It helps out a little bit. Makes you a better, smarter fan. All right, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll wrap up today's show here on The Rundown. As always, you can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Rob Sounds Good. Watch the show over there on Twitter as well. And you can get into the chat room here with all the SEC apologists that are plotting my death, which I'm fine with. 803-978-1832. Quick break. When we return, we'll wrap up this edition of The Rundown here on Fox Sports Radio 1400. I mentioned LSU with Texas there, Jed. Take your Geritol. Calm down. So under that logic, Jay Long, the whole thing with, Georgia Tech with an offense built for the 30s, when they beat Mississippi State, that didn't matter. Is that what you're telling me? Where Paul Johnson's on the field talking about, we don't have to worry about the SEC anymore. Dak Prescott on that team. Just saying. That game doesn't matter because it doesn't fit your narrative. Why don't you just go with the adage that none of the games matter? Then you don't have to deal with that at all. That makes the most sense. Rundown, this is Rob. I'm not trying to piss people off. This is just the way that I feel. Slim Shady, I appreciate you calling in, brother. It's just the way that I feel, and my hair's all whacked out today. I'm just realistic as I can be about this stuff. The idea of the conference is just stupid. That's just for people that are, they don't really pay attention. They don't. It's not that hard. I'm not going after Dak Prescott. He's a heck of a quarterback. He lost to Georgia Tech, though. His team did. I'm not trying to make the SEC irrelevant. I'm just saying that the idea of my conference is better than yours and we invented football is ridiculous. Brock with a good quote that I like there, buddy. The SEC is the best conference, but lower tier SEC schools shouldn't use it as a crutch. And schools from other conferences shouldn't let that SEC is the best mindset get to them. And when I look at the SEC, in reality, as I said, there are 3 teams that if I'm playing in any conference that I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be a problem. Generally, it's LSU because LSU generally has that really good defense and they run the piss out of the ball. Alabama because they're outstanding. And Georgia because they've got a lot of talent. The rest of them, come on. Just saying. Miami fears no team. I could talk about Clemson being ranked so high. We'll come back after that with hoops. Absolutely. I have no problem with that. Oof. I'm not going to talk about the officials, but yeah. There were some upset folks. I'm going to run and get my water, my ice thing out of the other room. We'll be right back. That's a good point too, buddy. Robert, good stuff there. Man, you coming off the top with the Louisiana Tech. Oof.
Stands 6'1" with gray hair, possibly wearing blue jeans. Last seen driving a white.
There's an Amber Alert. Solid. That's great, Brock. Final segment of the rundown this afternoon here on Fox Sports Radio 1400. If you want to respond to what we talked about earlier with the whole conference thing here and conference thing there, have at it. Really quick, though, on this front, someone asked about Clemson being ranked unfairly high as far as the basketball team goes. If you're someone that says the ACC is a basketball conference, you're in the same line of thinking when it comes to that too, where the SEC folks talk about being the best football conference. Yes, I know that you have Duke and North Carolina, and we're all supposed to be respectful of them. But the reality is that right now, are Duke and North Carolina ranked? I can't remember. I have to check the AP poll on that. When you say the ACC is a basketball conference, that doesn't make any sense either. There's been SEC teams, Big Ten teams, all kinds of teams that do things where they get into the tournament and make big runs. UCLA's won buku's national titles. I mean, crazy national titles. All right. So you're on the same end there if you think, oh, the ACC is just a basketball conference. As far as Clemson goes, we're going to figure that out on Wednesday when Terrence Oglesby, the former Clemson guard, joins us. He's now an analyst, does stuff for ESPN. And he's going to tell us why Clemson is not playing very well. Being the host that I am, I'll give you my 2 cents really quick. They can't defend a three-point shot. When they played Alabama earlier this season, which, by the way, is probably their best win of the season right now, they held Alabama to 3 for 22 shooting from three-point land. Clemson's last 4 games, they've given up 15 or more threes. Stop letting people shoot the three, and you're going to win some basketball games. I'm pretty sure that's what Terrence Oglesby is going to tell us on Wednesday when he joins the show. We're also going to talk wrestling on Friday with Mike Mooneyham from the Post and Courier. Shout out to Killer Mime, SEC Dog, for watching the program. Over on, you can find us on YouTube at Carolina Jackpot. Also on Periscope. Just go to look for at Rob Sounds Good. Watch the whole show there. And you can watch my pumpkin head talk about sports. All right, my final thing before I get out of here today. There's a couple of things yesterday that kind of made me silly. One of them was the Green Bay Packers fans, and I'm one of them. And the first thing that comes out of the Packers fans' mouth is very simple. We had this whole thing with that pass interference play that was called. Do not be a New Orleans Saints fan. Do not get to a position where you're put into a spot where if a ref makes or doesn't make a call, it could throw your entire season off. How about that? How about, I don't know, your coach, when you're on, you have the MVP of the league, not kicking a field goal. That makes a lot of sense. Why not go for it there? You're down 8, kick the field goal. If you miss, you've got them buried back at the 10-yard line. Just saying that call really was, if you want frustration, don't turn it to the official for making that call, which, I mean, he was grabbing his jersey. So they zoomed in on it. You could see it. Other than that, you can't really argue that game. Now, the other thing too is that the whole thing with Tom Brady. Look, Tom Brady has been great. Tom Brady has been great. Let's make sure we understand that. He's absolutely one of the best quarterbacks ever. But yesterday, he went into a game, threw 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. I think Tom Brady's an honest guy for the most part. Okay, now don't come at me with the deflate gate and the foot. I don't want to hear all that. My perception of Tom Brady is that generally he is a smart guy. All right, he threw 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions yesterday. And once again, Ndamukong Suh gets pasted again. People stop and they forget to say, oh, wait a minute. That Tampa Bay defense was pretty good. The Tampa Bay defense put them in the Super Bowl, not Tom Brady. He made plays when he was supposed to, but if it wasn't for the defense, they wouldn't have been there. Simple as that. So Green Bay fans, do your thing. And one other thing, Aaron Rodgers needs to stop. All right, your first thing, I don't know about what lots of things have to be shaken out. Look, you have a 3-year contract with the Packers. If you're going to retire, then retire. Simple as that. Stop with the nonsense of I'm going to have, I don't know exactly what my future holds. Stop that. You're not helping the franchise that's paying you a lot of money. Be respectful of the franchise. And this is the same way across at any franchise. If you're going to retire, retire. But don't sit here and hold people in limbo. You're under contract for 3 years. You're not going anywhere else. You're not going to, nobody's going to make a big, passionate power play to get Aaron Rodgers. I know he's great. He's going to be the NFL MVP this year. But the reality is this. Is there a better situation for Rodgers, the Green Bay right now? I'd love to hear it. Stop playing with people's emotions out there. It just makes you look just simple. And you don't have to do that. Tom Brady over in the YouTube chat says the Pats would. The Pats have bigger problems than quarterback, in my opinion. All right, tomorrow on the rundown, we're going to talk about, they've released, there was an article that someone sent me about the toughest upcoming schedules this year. We'll talk about that and how I laugh at that a little bit, but some of it kind of makes sense. We'll get into that tomorrow. Also, we'll talk a little bit of hoops. So we got some hoop talk we'll get into, all kinds of stuff tomorrow as we start to break down the Super Bowl too. So be sure to tune in for that. Lawton Swan from Clemson Sports Talk joins us next. Blake says Green Bay's head coach, though, I think he's older than I am, but he's a youngin. He's a youngin. So there's that. You know, the Green Bay game yesterday really disappointed me as a fan. Not going for it, just sad. All right, as I said, Lawton Swan is next. Teddy Hefner's on the morning on from 9 to noon. My name is Rob Sanders. Thanks so much for joining us here on The Rundown on Fox Sports Radio 1400. I'm sorry I make you mad there, Alan V. Troll Patrol. Hey, I podcast the show there, SEC Dog. If you like the podcast thing, man, just look for The Rundown with Rob, and then you can go back and you can actually rewatch it on YouTube, man. It'll be there in a few minutes. So sorry about that, man. Yeah, we start every day at 3, buddy. I appreciate you guys commenting over there, man. It makes the show a little more interesting. Anyway, thanks for checking us out, guys. We'll be back at it tomorrow. You guys are awesome. We'll see you later. Oh, and like the video, for goodness sake. My goodness.